Alright guys, welcome back to another video, and as you can see, this is obviously a weekly breakdown. So I'm about to show you guys basically how this week went. So if we go to the dashboard, which we can see right here, we ended up the week with a $126 win for this week. On Monday, I actually ended up taking two trades on two different pairs. The first pair was on Go on BTC actually. So I was selling Bitcoin, and as you can see, we ended up making about $54 on the trade on Bitcoin. I don't know. I was just swinging, selling Bitcoin. Okay, I sold Bitcoin and I was holding the swing since Saturday, and yeah, so we made about $54 on that. And on Nasdaq, ended up losing about $49, almost $50 on Nasdaq. So Bitcoin ended up covering up for this. But I don't really want to explain why I took on Bitcoin. But let's just focus on the actual strategy, since that is what I show you guys. Okay, so as you can see here, the first 5 minute candle marked out the high and marked out the low. We had a break, we had a retest. When we go to the 1 minute time frame, right there. So as you can see here, we had a break retest. After having the retest, we had this bullish candle here. I took my buy trade there, stop loss at the retest low, and then I went for a 1 to 2 risk reward. But unfortunately, we ended up getting stopped out right there. So, shit like that happens. We take losses sometimes. But yeah, I'll call it a day. And I kind of felt like it was because we had an SMT. Because right here, we took out this high. But on S&P, we didn't take out this high. So obviously, we had to move to the downside. But it is what it is. We lost that trade. So we closed that day for a $15 win. But realistically, if not for Bitcoin, it should have just been an L day, right? I didn't really show too much of Bitcoin because I don't really like teach Bitcoin and stuff. I was just selling Bitcoin because I felt like it was going to drop. Yo, so on Tuesday, we ended up making about $69, right? So here you can see I made about $100 on Nasdaq, but I ended up losing about $30 on gold. So if you guys don't know, I was also selling gold. I was holding gold sales too. But you can see here, Nasdaq ended up having a $100 win, but gold ended up making me lose about $30. But and that's how we were able to end that day with a $69 profit. So it obviously should have been $100 profit, but because of gold, we ended up losing this. I don't really teach other pairs, and I don't really like trading other pairs. It's just like once in a while. And if I'm trading other pairs, it's just to swing those pairs. So we ended up making about $100 on Tuesday on Nasdaq, and this was how it went. So as you can see here, same setup. You know how we trade every day. Mark out the first 5 minute candle, the 9:30 candle, high and low. We had a break here, but the retest tapped into the midpoint. So we're looking for a clean break and retest now. So here we have the clean break, and we also had a clean retest. After having this retest, I'm going to the 1 minute time frame right there. So as you see, we had this huge green candle to the upside after the retest. Taking my buys right there, stop loss at the retest low. So 1 to 2 risk reward got hit on Nasdaq, and you ended up making about $100 right there. And yeah, so same thing happened on Wednesday. Well, Wednesday was an L day actually, and I'm gonna explain why. So here, as you can see on Wednesday, we had a break, we had a retest, we had a fair value gap here, but we did not respect it. Instead, we tapped into this into the range. As you can see, after we tapped into the range, we had a down close candle on the 1 minute time frame. So I took my sell trade right there, and I went for a 1 to 2 risk reward. But if you guys notice, right, you guys need to understand something, okay? The reason why I lost this trade, because I ended up explaining it. Yeah, I did a separate video for my Discord members. The reason why we lost this trade was because of this fair value gap. So for us having the fair value gap getting respected, we came all the way back down, because remember, look at this fair value gap marked out on the 5 minute time frame. Now I'm going to the 1 minute time frame, so you guys actually see it. So keep in mind, this is a 5 minute fair value gap which we had. So we had a retest, and then we had this down close candle on the 1 minute time frame. So obviously that's our setup. We're taking the sell trade right there, and the stop loss is at the retest high, and then I'm going for a strictly 1 to 2 risk to reward ratio. But remember, we had a 5 minute fair value gap here, and you can see from here we had this huge push to the upside. So that was what I didn't notice back then, and I ended up taking the sell trade. So price was so close to my TP level, and we ended up having a reaction to the upside. So yeah, it is what it is. So most likely the TP would have just been on top of the fair value gap, just to be safe next time. Or if you don't mind taking a loss, then just go for the 1 to 2 risk to reward. So here, as you can see, same setup. mark out the first 30 minute, first 5 minutes of the market open, mark out the high, mark out the low. Here we had the break, we had the retest, we tap into this midpoint. So we're looking for a new break. You guys already know how that works. So now we have this break, huge push to the upside, as you can see here. So here we had a 5 minute fair value gap. Remember, I'm telling you, pick the fair value gap that is the closest to the range. And right here, this is the 5 minute fair value gap that is the closest to the range. So this was my level, not this fair value gap and not this fair value gap. Instead, the fair value gap closest to the range. So here, price had this huge push to the downside to tap into the fair value gap. And after we tap into the fair value gap, I went straight to the 1 minute time frame to look for trades to the upside right here. So after the retest happened on the 5 minute fair value gap, I waited for the bullish green candle. As you can see, after the bullish green candle, took my buy trade. And remember, the stop loss has to be at the end of the fair value gap. So stop loss at the end of the fair value gap, and TP going for another 1 to 2 risk to reward. I know you guys might say, oh, there was a fair value gap on the 5 minute too. Yeah, there was a fair value gap. Like I said, you can decide to, take the loss, or you can decide to go for a full TP. So here, TP would have literally been this fair value gap here. TP would have literally been this fair value gap here. But since I didn't really care that much, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go for the 1 to 2 since we're so bullish off of this fair value gap, and that was basically what I did. And I went for 1 to 2 risk reward, and that was how I was able to make about $87 right there. So I didn't trade any other pair. Instead, I just traded NASDAQ only. Even on Wednesday, I only traded NASDAQ. Before I get into today's trade, like I said, I was gonna go back to Thursday and Wednesday's trade. So you guys can already see, right? We have this fair value gap here, which is the same fair value gap here on S&P 500, which you can see right here. Notice how the fair value gap here was the one who boosted price up. It boosted NASDAQ and it also boosted S&P to the upside, not this fair value gap. Now let's also check what happened right here on Wednesday. Notice how this fair value gap here was the one who got respected. Price did not tap into this range, but instead this fair value gap here was the one who pushed price all the way to the downside. Same thing, but the fair value gap here did not push price down to the downside, right, on NASDAQ, but still you had this huge move to the downside. So here S&P is dropping price down, and here we can see NASDAQ, this fair value gap is the one taking price up. So today, I feel like what we did was the opposite of what price has been doing. Because notice here, you had this huge break to the downside, huge push to the downside. I already know price was so bearish because throughout the week we've been so bearish. So here we had the range, and we also had the closest fair value gap here. So I marked it out. I was waiting for price to tap back into this fair value gap here. But notice this same fair value gap on S&P 500 is the same fair value gap marked out on NASDAQ right here. But S&P 500 fair value gap, 5 minute fair value gap got tapped into, but on NASDAQ, the fair value gap didn't get tapped into. If you notice, like I said, yesterday, it was NASDAQ's fair value gap that pushed price to the upside. This fair value gap did not get tapped in on S&P. It was the 5 minute fair value gap on NASDAQ that pushed price up to the upside. So I'm looking right here and I'm like, would S&P's fair value gap be the one to push NASDAQ's and S&P's price action to the downside? Or should I just wait for NASDAQ to tap into the fair value gap? So we tap into the fair value gap here. We didn't tap into the fair value gap here. Still waiting patiently. But on the 1 minute time frame, after the fair value gap got tapped into, right about here on S&P, after this fair value gap got tapped into, we had this huge push to the downside right here. So after this huge push to the downside, and this would have been our entry here on NASDAQ, because notice we only take trades on NASDAQ, and this would have been the entry here on NASDAQ since we had the push to the downside right here. We also have a clean bearish push to the downside after we tapped into the 5 minute fair value gap. Stop loss would have been at the end of the fair value gap on NASDAQ, and could have just gone for a 1 to 2 risk reward. So this would have been another crazy trade, but And the annoying thing that happened again was Price actually ended up going back to the Fair Valley Gap. I don't know, maybe Price was trying to tell me like, yo, you lost the chance, so take it one more time. So Price tapped into the Fair Valley Gap again. And after they tap into it, he had the wait, hold on, let me check. I need to make sure. Okay, after we tap into this Fair Valley Gap here, that was 10:35. So 10:35, like 10:39 was when this candle closed. So yeah, so at 10:39, you can see again, price ended up closing right there. So here, it's at 10:39, somewhere right here. So as you can see, this would have also been another sell. Wait, hold on, that's a reverse. So this would have also been another selling opportunity for me again. But this time, just that the stop loss was bigger. And if we went for a 1 to 2 race reward, this trade would have gone. This is just one example. If I keep seeing this happening over time, then maybe I might just implement it into the strategy whereby if S&P taps into a 5 minute fair value gap, but Nasdaq doesn't tap into the fair value gap, but we have a reaction on S&P, but we also have the same reaction on Nasdaq. Maybe we could just take it on Nasdaq because we don't trade S&P, we strictly trade Nasdaq. So Monday was an L day. BTC covered us up. I didn't really care because I'm showing you guys BRC, not other strategies. Um, Nasdaq, we lost on Monday. Nasdaq, we had a win. Wednesday, we had a loss. Thursday, we had a win. So even though you had 2 losses and 2 wins, you're still going to be up for the day. So even if I didn't have this profit on BTC, let's say I had it for the $50 loss. Remember, I would have also had $100 win. That's already covering up for Monday's loss. Wednesday, I had a $47 win, loss. Now, I'm already down for the week. But now on Thursday, we came in with an $87 win. So this is obviously covering up for all the losses, basically. So yeah, that is it for, this weekly breakdown. And I'll see you guys next week. Peace.